I'm Gary Carter, and in the next few weeks, we're going to learn what it takes to launch a startup from initial concept to launch. We have a team of mentors from Silicon Beach to teach us important topics, and a startup in progress that's currently tackling these issues. We embrace and learn from our successes and failures. Welcome to Concept to Code. Today on Concept to Code, we're going to learn about branding. What is it? Is it just a cool name with a neat font and circle around it? Should it represent you as a founder or an abstract entity? Maybe both. Does branding evolve over time? To answer these questions and more, I'm pleased to welcome our guest mentor, Fabian Geierholter. He's the founder and principal of Finian, a consultancy specialized in turning ventures into brands. His client list includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Goodwill, Brandman University, W Hotels, USC, Evolution Juice, and John Varvatos. He's the co-author of the #1 bestseller, How to Launch a Brand, and he's also a mentor to a lot of startups here in Silicon Beach. Fabian, please join us.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
I hope I did a good job introducing your personal brand.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Let's see where we take it.
Okay.
All right. How to launch a brand. Let's start with defining what the word brand stands for. When you think about brand, you think about big fashion logos, you think about scandals like the Exxon oil scandal. But really what a brand is, it is so much more. I define brand as a service, product, company, or a person with a soul that is attractive and smart. Let's talk about this a little further. What does it mean to have soul? As a brand, you need to have heart. If you don't have heart, it's going to be hard for people to actually like you. And as a brand, you need to be lovable. The second part, attractive. You need to be attractive, obviously, because if someone doesn't get attracted to your brand, if it's on the shelf, in the app store, if it's not attractive, how will you ever sell it? How would people get to use your actual app or your actual product? Now, smart, that's the UI and the UX these days. But smart is also about the usability of a water bottle. Does it fit into the cup holder? Does it spill when you open it? So creating a brand, you have to infuse soul, have to make it attractive, which is not sexy, but it is something that gets people to like it, and it has to be smart. Soul is the brand platform. We will talk about that. Attractive is the brand atmosphere. Now that's a little more esoteric. So if you imagine your product or your app, service, company, or person being right there, the brand atmosphere is everything around it. So once a consumer starts interacting with your product or service, it has to go through the brand atmosphere. Now that is the logo, that is the design of a flyer, that is e-marketing, that is your app design. Anything that is visual and verbal is your brand atmosphere. That's what gets people attracted to it. And then smart, we already discussed. So let's talk about how to get you there. There are 5 distinct steps of how to get you there. And they're very process-oriented. You always start at the heart and soul, at the brand platform. So brand platform, you can also think of the foundation of a house. You wouldn't start planning the house without having the foundation. The foundation is that brand platform. It's the brand strategy. From there on, you start naming the company. Many founders screw that up. Many founders start with, I've got a great name. I've got an idea, I've got a great name. But really, they don't start at the soul and asking the question, why? So from naming, you go to identity, and identity really is logo. Move into the brand atmosphere and the digital design. Now you can tell on the graphic here, digital design and brand atmosphere, that's what people see most of the time. So that's really what creates a smile. The rest, naming, identity, brand platform, it's kind of behind the scenes, right? So these are the consumer-facing items. Now you might say you're a tech company, and this does not make sense to you, because if you start doing all of these things, name the company, give the company a logo, create the brand atmosphere, and then you do your app, and you do a prototype, and it fails, then you have to redo everything again. So you're absolutely right. So on the next process slide, we can see how you have to first do the digital design and the brand platform at the same time. So the two of them should happen at the same time. You fail forward is something that a lot of startup founders say. You fail forward, and then once you have it figured out, oh, the app works, that's my target audience, this is how it needs to work, and you have the brand platform figured out, then you give it a name, not before. All right, so that out of the way, let's go into the main criteria. Let's start with brand platform and strategy. The question what is already defined by the business plan. So you don't have to worry about that. You know what you're doing, you know the finances, the goals that you set. The question why is one that you have to answer. Why do you care so deeply about that? You're gonna have lots of pizza nights. You might not be in your teens or 20s anymore. So your startup, the question why is also a personal question. But why does someone care? That needs to be answered before you launch anything. Who is the audience? Who is the one person that would care? And when you talk about the audience, you really give them name, figure out who is that person. Say, oh, it's Matt, and Matt is 34 years old. Matt likes this music. Matt likes these brands. That's Matt. I have to infuse my brand into this person. And then there are 3, 4 target personas. Sometimes you can actually cut them out and put them on the side of your cube and say, I do this brand for these people, not for me. Right? It's very difficult to do. And in order to get there, one of the key ingredients, you see there are 7 ingredients: competitor analysis, target audience personas, positioning statement, brand identity associations, points of difference, brand personality, and the core values. What I would love for you to do is focus first and foremost on the positioning statement. And that's what you can see on the top right. To your target audience, which you very clearly have to define, our product is so it might be the app, that provides what are the benefits, and functional, symbolic, or experiential, you don't have to think too much about it, but what are the benefits to the user when they actually download the app and start using it? Because, and this is where most people fail, they don't think about the because. They think, oh, because it's cheaper, or because someone needs it, or because I had this great idea and it's not on the market. But the because needs to go much, much deeper. If you look at Tom's shoes, and you can see it tiny here on the bottom right, Tom's shoes has a because. Tom's shoes has a movement. It's the one-for-one movement. And what they do is that when you buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes to someone in need. So if Tom's would create this positioning statement, which of course I'm sure they have, the because would be because everybody deserves a pair of shoes. That's a because. When that happens, you've got heart, it's soul. Guess what? You're selling product. You've got a brand. All right, moving on to step number 2, naming. So once you have that figured out, you can name your company. Our consultancy is called Finian, which is rather strange of a name for a consultancy. Let's take that as an example. It's short and easy to pronounce. Yes, it's really hard to screw up. We can own the IP, the intellectual property. We own the domain name, the .com, the trademark. We can Google search Finian, and the first couple pages is only us. There's no big company that owns the name. Does it tell a story? Not really. Can it tell a story? Yes. And that is very important. If you come up with a name that can't tell a story, and it doesn't tell a story yet, it's really difficult for consumers to like it and to start engaging with it. Can it tell a story? So Finian, in 3 different languages, in Portuguese, Latin, and French, on the one hand it means seed, so we plant the seed. It means compass, so we set the direction. And then finir in French means to finish something up. So it talks about our process in the company. So suddenly, when new clients come to us and they're like, well, you do naming, so what's your name about? There's a story. Your story needs to be either already told, or you need to tell it to the customer through your about page. Does it stand out from the competitors? Make sure your name stands out from the competitors. It doesn't need to stand out hugely, but it needs to fit in, but yet a little different. It needs to kind of surface. And then it needs to be culturally friendly. So Finian in Scandinavian shouldn't mean something vulgar. And you should figure this out very early on. All right, that's step number 2. Step number 3, we're going to talk about identity design. And the big question is, how many logos do you think you see on any given day in a major metropolis like Los Angeles, London, New York? Any ideas? All right, 16,000 logos. So here I am saying stand out. Make sure that your startup stand out. So if we look at how to stand out on the next slide, you will get a good idea that you need to have something timeless. Look at these 3 logos. These are all fairly new startups. They're all digital startups, apps. They all look very close. They're all lowercase script fonts. They all use the blue color. That's not how you stand out. In order to create something timeless, like a Coca-Cola brand or a UPS brand, try to not fit in with your logo. Try to really stand out. That's how you can attempt to do something timeless, right? Do something unique and distinct. Look at IKEA and UPS. You knew that was UPS and IKEA. That's pretty powerful stuff, right? Just because they're really bold. It's very different. If you think about a furniture retail space, you wouldn't think about those crazy colors, right? So they really did something to stand out. Tell a story. Just like with naming, telling a story is so important. Amazon.com, you most probably didn't think about the logo too much before. It's just kind of there. It's very utilitarian, like Facebook is utilitarian these days. Amazon is utilitarian. But what it does, it delivers from A to C, so you see the arrow, from A to C, and it delivers a smile. So that grin, that happiness that arrives at the end of their journey, that's a lot of thinking in a logo that just has this tiny little thing there. That's a great story right there. Simple, flexible, that's an identity that we redesigned. That was the before, and this here was the after. So what happens when you have a logo that is very complex, like an illustration, it is really, really difficult to adapt it to different uses. So what we created is we split each letter into half, and it shows the symbiotic relationship of the creative talent agency, the talent and the agency. Without each other, they don't work. And so there's still a big story in it, but it's very easy to duplicate. All right, moving on to number 4, the brand atmosphere. This is where everything comes together. This is where your strategy, the name, the identity, all comes together, and everything looks similar. It all has one look and feel attached to it. And this is very difficult for founders to do because you get bored of your stuff. You're like, okay, here's another green thing, here's another green thing, and I'm so sick of my colors, and let's do something else. But you can't. You have to penetrate the user with your colors, with your brand. Otherwise, they will never, ever remember it. Because you see it all the time, but they only see it once every couple of weeks. So consistency in design is super important. On the next slide, I show you how you can use a trick to get to that consistency. Once you do your very first design of your brand, may it be a flyer, may it be the app screen, may it be an e-marketing tool, the very first design you do, you look at it and say, what is my primary color, the main color I use? What is the secondary color I use? Main font, secondary typeface. If you have any icons associated with it, main and secondary. And then you pin that in your cube. Cube is not a startup word. You pin it wherever you work, at your coffee shop, and you always use this when you do any marketing materials, any design. You say, when I squint my eyes, is it first that ochre yellow, and is it afterwards that red? Perfect, I follow my rules, right? This helps tremendously. And we have very little time. I know there's a lot of talk we're going to do. So this is really it with those 4 steps. I leave you with 2 URLs in case you want to learn a little bit more about how to launch as a brand. Howtolaunchabrand.com. This is where you can get the book. Finian.com/insights is a wonderful place for you guys to get free white papers, lots of blog entries about branding, about naming, if you have any questions. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Fabian, for that insightful presentation. When we come back, we're going to meet our startup team favorite, and they're going to have a nice discussion with Fabian on branding.
Riding a bicycle can seem like child's play.
But only if you're playing indoors. Cars and bikes need to play together.
Play it safe. Ride by the rules.
Hey, share the road.
Welcome back to Concept to Code, a show focused on giving you the skills to launch your startup. I'm your host, Gary Carter, and today we're learning about branding. As we hear presentations on key topics from our mentors, we'll also have the opportunity to see how these topics affect a startup company in real life. Would you have avoided a wrong move, maybe missed an opportunity, or it's possible the decision really didn't have an impact? Our featured startup today is a company called Favorite, and the team will give us an insider's view of their company during a critical time. It's their startup launch. Please give a warm welcome to Anke Audenart and Ricardo Garcia of Favorite. Favorite, please take a moment to introduce yourself. Let's kick it off, Anke.
Hi, so my name is Anke Audenart. I'm one of the co-founders of Favorite. My background is in market research, marketing, and digital analytics. I came to Favorite after having wrapped up another company, Jump Time. That was a company that we started. I was one of the co-founders. We sold that company to an advertising technology company here in LA, OpenX. Before that, I was at Yahoo, where I concentrated on market research, and that's really where I learned some about branding. I was at Yahoo for about 8 years, but now at Favorite, kind of starting from scratch all over again.
Hi, I'm Ricardo Garcia. I'm VP Development of Favorite, and I grew up in San Dimas, California, went to MIT to study computer science, and came back to California a few years ago to specialize in mobile and web development with an emphasis in advertising and social.
Wow, what a great background, both of you guys. So, my first question that I have for you is, how did you come up with the concept for Favorite? And out of curiosity, what were you doing when you came up with the concept?
It's an interesting question. Actually, we were on a road trip going from LA to San Francisco. We were in the car with the kids. We're on 101, and at some point the kids are hungry, so we have to go find a place to eat. So we just exit 101 somewhere randomly, usually not really the best thing to do, but we find a place, this very small restaurant, kind of a farm-to-table place, really good food, very nice lunch, nice people, we had fun, so we're on our way again. The next year, we're on a road trip again, this time somewhere close to Santa Barbara. We kind of remember that we've been to this place that we really liked, we're hungry again, we want to go to that place. Turns out we don't remember the name, we don't know where the place was, we cannot find it. We have a phone full of apps, they don't really help, we still don't find the place. So we end up eating a rather bad burger. And after that we think about kind of our experience, thinking that, hey, that's something that seems to be missing. We really would like to build something that would solve this issue for us. Like, we like bookmarking things online. Why not having a way to bookmark our favorite physical places and share that with our friends? So that's how Favorite was born.
I most certainly can't wait to use the software. So now that you have the concept and you understand your market and who you're trying to reach, how did you develop the branding? What did you consider? And where are you at in that process right now?
Well, actually, the branding itself kind of started with having our product concept first, then having to attach a brand to it. So we thought about kind of first the name. It's kind of the first thing that came up. Then once we had the name, we also thought through a few image elements that we wanted the brand to stand for. The brand as well as our company, really, but what did we want people to feel when they were using the brand? One of the big things for Favorite, for instance, was that it was going to be a positive brand that was going to delight people. So this is not about reviews, negative reviews, positive reviews. It's just about the things that you like, and that has to be reflected in the brand, we felt. So that was one of these aspects, and we built kind of about 6 image elements like that we felt had to be part of our core branding. We wrote that down, kind of we put that on paper. We're trying now to kind of communicate that within our little team. And then on top of that, what we did is we used that information to inform the people that were going to help us with design, because that was ultimately, for now, it's really the only kind of way that we can express our branding is through our design. And we were lucky enough to work with a designer that could actually help us with this and could reflect these image elements very well in the design that he came up with. So we did a lot of brainstorming with the designer to make sure that our product looked and felt like what we wanted the brand to stand for. And now we're actually working on translating some of those brand image elements towards what should this be when we communicate about the brand or when we distribute content, like how do we translate that voice into the brand. So that's kind of basically the process we're in right now. So our product hasn't launched yet. I'm sure we will get more feedback from consumers as we go. For now, we've tried to collect feedback on the name through like a little survey. We've collected feedback through the look and feel of what we had, just by talking to our friends, talking to some people in restaurants, some restaurant owners, just kind of get a sense of what they feel this looks like and whether this represents what we're intending to do with the brand. But that's where we are right now.
During development, I've been trying to maintain consistency with the iconography, and so I've been working with the designer to make sure that the icons go in the right place for lists and buttons and maintain consistency for that and the brand aspect.
Great. So if things change, that's a lot of work for you then?
I try to design it in such a way that it won't be a lot of work, but yes, sometimes.
That's great. Well, Fabian, I'm sure you have some questions and some insight from a branding perspective you want to share?
Absolutely. So first off, congrats. That's a great journey. I love the story. I love the founder's background, which is always very important, especially once you go towards the VC round, if that's anything that you would ever do. MIT and Yahoo and your marketing and brand expertise, this is definitely a different kind of level of a startup that would usually be on the show. So that's great. Question about the actual idea, the app, just to make sure, as you said, branding is not about the name and the logo, but it's a big component of it, but it's more about how it makes people feel and why people really come back to it. What is the single thing in your guys' eyes that really differentiates Favorite from like Potluck It or even Foursquare, or there's a lot of different apps, right?
Yep.
You're trying to kind of like put them into one destination.
Yeah. I think for us, kind of the core kind of image element we try to work around is delight. But we feel that somehow, so what we're developing is, it is simple, very easy to use, and focused on just one thing, kind of save your favorites. And then you can share that with people around you, but the idea is that it's not about reviews, so no negative reviews and positive reviews and lots of things to scroll through, no, just the favorites. It's not about checking in, so that's how we distinguish ourselves from other apps that have that check-in element. No, this is not about us wanting to find our friends, it's really just about those lists that we want to keep. So we're trying to really focus on one core aspect and kind of be very straightforward in just going down that one route. That's how we think we will differentiate ourselves primarily.
And that is the one differentiator, and you're going to write that out, which is great. I love that idea that it's the simplicity of the usability of it. This is the one thing. If ever I want to save it, if you want to go on a rant, you go to Yelp. If you want to go to show your friends that you're in this really cool restaurant, you go to Foursquare, Facebook, whatever. That was my biggest concern from a brand perspective, is like, how do they stand out? There's so many bookmarking tools. There's so many apps that let you check in and share reviews. That's not what you're about. You're about, I love this place. I favorite it. It's kind of like a signature. Like you actually, it's an emotional thing. It's like, this is important enough for me to actually hit that button. It doesn't happen all the time. Not 4-star, not 3-star. This is the 1 5-star rating, basically. Yeah. That's very interesting. And I see a lot of avenues of where companies that could buy it, like Sagat or someone, or companies that could acquire it, which might not be your goal. But back to the core of the branding. Favorite, I love the name. And I tell you, I hate most names. I love that name. It's really great, especially because one of the things that I always preach to my clients and as a mentor is, don't misspell your name. It is really not smart. Misspelling, not good. Like you use Uber, okay, I get it, there's an umlaut, but I know how to spell it. You use Lyft, I'm like, I looked at Lyft, I couldn't find it. Well, if it's with a Y, and I'm like, oh my God, this does not work for a consumer, word of mouth. Favorite, it's missing a letter, but it's no problem because you say favorite, it works. And there's a story with the it at the end and the favor. And so I think you wanted to chime in, but I really like that.
Well, that was a great discussion, and thank you for letting us eavesdrop. Definitely some good information, I think, for the audience in that discussion. But we're going to take a quick break, And when we return, we're going to hear questions from our audience. I'm sure they have some questions on their mind that you may have at home. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Discover 30 years of opera in Santa Monica. Discover the Verdi Chorus.
Welcome back to Concept to Code, a show focused on giving you the skills to launch your startup. I'm your host, Gary Carter, and today we're learning about branding with our guest mentor, Fabian Geierhalter, and our startup company, Favorite. We only have a few minutes left, so let's have one question from the audience.
So, Favorite, is the app only good for restaurants?
Actually, no. Maybe we've misled you with our kind of introduction story, but no, it's for restaurants and any physical places. So that could also be stores, could be your favorite bike stores, for instance. It could be even, say, hiking trails, anything you would like to remember and bookmark for yourself.
And I feel like the logo designer thought of that with the location pin and with the star. It's like wherever you are location-based, is that what you favorite?
That's where the logo kind of symbol came from, yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Fabian Geierhalter, and thank you, Favorite, for the learning experience. And thank you for joining us today. We'll see you back next time for more Concept to Code.